Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
Jesus.
Hello.
So just give us a few minutes whilst we let everybody in through the lobby. Should be about 25 people joining us this afternoon.
Busy afternoon.
Is everybody in, Claire, from the
Yep.
lobby? Okay. And are we looking like we've got 20 plus?
18 at the moment.
Okay, so we'll just give it another minute.
I'm just going to mute everyone for the moment. Claire, if you just unmute yourself. Okay.
One more.
Yep, just admitting. Yeah, we've got near 20 now, Claire.
Okay, so welcome everybody. We will get started. So welcome to BOC's Getting Started with BOC webinar for Part B Home Oxygen Prescribers. The reason for this webinar today is because next Monday, yes, it's coming around that quickly, next Monday, BOC will take over from Air Liquide as your home oxygen service provider. So the provider for the East Midlands region. My name's Claire Roof and I'm BOC's transition lead, and would like to thank you for joining us today. With regards to the transition to the handover from Air Liquide, this time round, unlike previous home oxygen or some previous home oxygen contract changes, there are very few changes for you to be aware of as a prescriber, and even fewer for your patients. But the main change for you as prescribers is that under the new contract, HOOFs must be submitted via the provider's portal. Plus, given the change from Air Liquide to us, you'll need to make a note of some different contact details. Today's session is focused on getting you started with BOC so that you're ready and able to submit HOOFs and change HOOFs from next Monday when we become your provider. It's very much an introductory session to give you what you need to be able to manage your existing patients' oxygen and to take on new patients' oxygen needs from next Monday. We plan to hold further webinars after go live, so later on in October and November, to get you more familiar with our portal. Those sessions will take you through things that you're going to see briefly today, so individual patient dashboards and reports that you and your administrators, if you have them in your team, will be interested in understanding to help you manage your oxygen clinics, your patient caseload. We're doing those after go live because at the moment your current patient data is not in our systems. You can't see it on the portal, and we believe those sessions will make much more sense to you once you've got familiar with seeing your patients, patient data in the system, and once there's data as well in there for you to be able to pull into reports. So by the end of today's session, the introductory session, we hope that you'll know how to find your patients, your existing patients on our portal, how to create and amend a HOOF, be familiar with the equipment that we're bringing into the region that will be new to you, so that we're bringing in on top of what's already with patients today, and be reassured by our prime focus on patient safety. Taking you through the session today will be my team of colleagues, with one exception. Unfortunately, Niall Farrow, who's the home care team manager, so the manager of the technicians, the home care technicians who are based across the region, he is unfortunately unable to join us today. But the rest of the gang are here. So we'll introduce ourselves one by one. As I said, I'm Claire Roof. I'm responsible for project managing this transition, and I've been working with the East Midlands contract lead and clinical lead, who you may know, Wendy Bradford, to ensure that the handover from Air Liquide goes smoothly and as safely as possible for your patients. Over to our other Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire Murphy and I'm the clinical lead for BOC. So I have the overall clinical responsibility for the home oxygen regions, and I also double hat and have the clinical responsibility for our 14 to 15 clinical services up and down the country where we deliver HOS-AR and rehab services as well. So that's me. Over to Hazel.
Hi, I'm Hazel O'Mara and I'm the patient service manager. So I'm based up in Worsley and look after the team that you'll probably get to know quite well. Over to you, Joe. Oh, who's picking up Niall?
I'm just going to introduce our colleague Niall Farrow. He's the home care team manager for East Midlands, so he's going to be quite a familiar face for all of you. He'll be supporting the technicians on the ground, and he's been with BOC for quite some time now. So that's Niall.
Okay, and I'm Joe Dillon. I'm one of two home care data analysts, so I'm responsible for providing both structured and ad hoc reporting for both internal purposes and to the NHS as well on how we're doing, for example. But most personally for today's presentation, I am the expert user and key point of contact for the home oxygen portal. So I'll be taking you through a demonstration of how it works and what it looks like.
Okay, thank you. And before we move on, we thought it would be nice if you could each briefly introduce yourselves. So if you could give your name, your role, which team or organisation you work in, and whether you're already submitting hoofs via Air Liquide's portal. So Hazel, we'll call you up one by one. And don't forget to unmute your mic.
Hi. The first name on the list, I'm not sure I can pronounce, so apologies up front. Abhinandad. I'm sorry, I can't.
That's me.
Hello.
That was a good try. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
You can call me Abhi. Yeah. Hi.
Abhi,
hi.
perfect. I'm
Yeah.
blushing now as well. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You're not the one, and you won't be the last. Yeah. My name is Abhi Bidari. I work for Impact Plus team up in Derby. I've recently started doing oxygen visits, so I'm not completely new. A fairly new person to oxygen services. At present, we are doing hooves via, our System 1 portal. So we do hooves and email them across to Air Liquide, and that's how we are told, and that's how I do it at the minute. So I'm not aware about. I don't have access to Air Liquide portal as well, just to let you know. But I've registered with BOC and I've got access as Part B prescriber to portal.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Abhi.
Thank you. No worries.
Next on my list, I have Karen Chambers.
Hi, yes. So I'm Karen Chambers. I'm a cardiorespiratory physiotherapist. and I'm based with the Rushcliffe CCG of Nottinghamshire NHS Foundation Trust, community-based, work with a respiratory team, and use the Liquid portal, familiar with sort of submitting hoofs via that. So yeah.
Oh, great. Lovely. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
I now have Catherine Cope on my list next.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cope. I'm one of the respiratory ACPs at Lincoln County Hospital. So we provide obviously inpatient and outpatient oxygen services, and I am familiar with submitting hoofs on Air Liquide's portal.
Lovely, thank you. Ruth Crowder.
Hello, yeah, I'm one of the community respiratory nurses. I work for Lincolnshire Community Health Services. I'm based in the south of Lincolnshire. We do currently submit all our hoofs through the Air Liquide portal, and I have used the BOC portal as well, because some of our patients that border Peterborough and Cambridgeshire actually are already under yourselves. So.
Oh, lovely. So you're used to it already then?
Yeah, I have used it. Yeah, it's very good.
Oh, that's good. That's good news to have, everybody. It's all very good. Thank you. Karen Cox.
Yeah, hi. I'm one of the respiratory nurse specialists as well for Lincolnshire Community Health Services with the Lincolnshire Community Respiratory Team. I'm one of the nurse leads for the team, and yeah, just the same as Ruth, familiar with the Air Liquide portal, submitting hoof Part Bs. But I've not had any experience from the BOC portal because I'm based in Lincoln.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Karen. Julie Dans.
Hi, yeah, I'm one of the nurses from Northamptonshire on Kettering General End Hospital area. We work in the hospital and out in the community, do Part B hoofs, only know about Air Liquide portal, no experience with BOC portal.
Thank you. Debbie.
Hello, I'm Debbie. I'm a community respiratory nurse. I work with the hospital to home early support, early discharge support team for PICS in Nottingham. I'm aware of the Air Liquide site, but I haven't actually ordered any myself. My colleague tends to do that. So obviously it's something that I may be doing in the future.
Lovely. Thank you. Catherine Farndon.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name's Kat. I work with the Impact Plus team in Derbyshire. I've got some experience using at the Air Liquide hoofs, but we don't use the portal generally. We tend to do it through our system one.
Okay. Thank you. Trudy Smith.
Hi, I'm Trudy Smith. I work for the North West Lincolnshire Community Health Team as a respiratory nurse, mainly covering Lincoln. I've used the Air Liquide portal, but not currently on the BOC portal using.
But you use Air Liquide on a regular basis.
Yeah, we tend to be. We've been using that for a while. It's just new to us, the BOC one. Some of us.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Catherine Watson.
Hi, yeah, I'm Catherine. I work in the Lincolnshire Community Health Services respiratory team based across in Louth, and yeah, we use the Air Liquide portal for all of our oxygen ordering. We do cross-boundary into Baywater area as well, because we go up to sort of Grimsby border, but obviously that gets done through Air Liquide and then passed over the border. So.
Okay, Thank you. So you normally submit that to Air Liquide and they pass it over, do they, for you?
Yes, yeah. We don't have access to Baywater portal.
Right, okay, that's good to know. Thanks, Catherine. Wendy Twells.
Hi, I'm Wendy Twells. I'm one of the hospital to home nurses at the City Hospital in Nottingham. So we do hospital and community. I've used the Air Liquide portal doing Part Bs.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks.
I think I've got myself a little bit lost on my list of who I'm asking. I think I've gone out of order. Sarah Good.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sarah. I also work for the Lincolnshire Community Health Services as well with the other girls. So just the same, use the Air Liquide portal and have been doing for a little while now. So, but not use the BOC one yet.
Right. Okay. Lovely. Well, next week will be the day.
Yeah.
Lorraine Goy.
Hello.
Hi, Lorraine.
Hello, I'm Lorraine Goy. I'm one of the respiratory nurses based at Spalding and working for the Lincoln Community Health Service. I'm fairly new to the post, so I haven't actually done any sort of option assessments, so very new to the portals and the hoof.
Okay, hopefully by the end of this, you'll know exactly what you need to do.
Absolutely, thank you.
Sonia, we've not spoke yet, have we?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yep, hello.
Hi, I'm Sonia Hutchby. I'm one of the respiratory nurse specialists with PICS team, and yes, I do submit hoofs via the Air Liquide portal.
Lovely, thank you. I think Joe, right?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can. Hi.
I'm using a PC and a dictaphone for the microphone, so I'm improvising. So I'm from Burton and Derby. Myself and my colleague Kate is also here. We do home oxygen for East Staffordshire, which is mostly through OxyShop with Baywater. However, we also have quite a lot of Derbyshire patients, hence Air Liquide and now BOC. So I've not used BOC before, so looking forward to using it, hopefully.
So you would submit through both portals, you'd use that
we use OxyShop for Staffordshire patients. Previously, we just had to use a straightforward Hoof B form to email to Air Liquide. So I'm hoping that the portal with BOC will be a little bit more user-friendly.
Hopefully that's what you'll take away from this session.
We're not allowed access to the Air Liquide portal, so it's been a little bit awkward.
Ah, right, okay. So have you registered yet, Joe?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
because I did it a while back.
Okay, oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Trudy Wilson.
Hello. Hello. Home oxygen nurse for Kettering General Hospital. We use the Air Liquide portal. We've not used the BOC one as yet.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Trudy. And I think the last person on my list is Nicola.
Hello, yep, I'm a respiratory specialist with Lincolnshire Community Health Services, part of the community respiratory team based in the south, and yes, we use Air Liquide portal.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
If I've missed anybody, can you raise your hand on the, I think I managed to shout everyone out. Lovely, thanks. Back to you, Claire.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for introducing yourself. As we would have really loved to have been able to meet you in person by holding these events at various venues across the region, but unfortunately COVID has put pay to that. So instead we're having to resort to delivering this training by webinar, which we appreciate is less engaging for you, hence we've gone through the introductions, but we hope that you still find the information useful and interesting. There will be some opportunity to engage with us throughout the session today. You can send us a question at any time. If you're not familiar with Teams, the the chat or the conversation option is indicated on the screen at the moment, so you can type a question and send that to us. And also we'll have breaks after each topic area. There'll be sort of limited amount of time for questions, and you can put your hand up by clicking on the hand icon if you're wanting to say a question. Any questions that we can't answer today because of time or because we don't know the answer and we need to go away and check, we'll cover in a document that we'll get to you following this session. So to help the session run smoothly, just a few housekeeping points. If you could please keep your microphones on mute to avoid the distraction of background noise. Feel free to have your cameras on or off as you prefer. Please note we are recording the session, so we'll send you, possibly tomorrow now, we'll send you details of where you can access the recording of the session. Although it's no secret, it will be on the video library on the portal, which Joe will highlight to you later on. You can, if you choose to, you can watch it again yourself, grab a bag of popcorn on Friday evening and watch this again. But we thought more importantly, we're recording it for colleagues who have been unable to make the time to attend the session today. So for any colleagues that you know haven't been able to attend any webinars, please encourage them to register for the portal, and then they can view the video from within the video library, and it'll be just like they were with us today. We'll also share this slide pack with you afterwards for people that don't have time to go through the whole recording. Also say several of us will mention various contact details throughout this session. They'll be on the slides, but because we'll send you the slide pack, you don't need to worry about trying to scribble them down quickly and correctly today. So we'll get started with the agenda, and we thought for those of you who are not familiar with BOC, we should just do a quick introduction to ourselves. So we have a long history, or BOC has a long history in the home oxygen service. BOC has been a provider of home oxygen since 2006 when it started. We have a track record of delivering, we believe, a quality and a caring service to patients, and a track record of introducing innovation to, whether that's to improve patient safety or to support you as prescribers. So some examples are that BOC developed the fire brake, which is now standard in oxygen installations. It's a very small part, but a very important part of oxygen installations. It's a very small valve that sits in the oxygen tubing between the equipment and the patient's interface, and it prevents the oxygen that's been ignited in the event of a fire from reaching the patient's face. So a pretty important item. From a supporting prescriber perspective, we were the first provider to mandate hoof submission via a portal, which you might moan about initially, but we can testify, and prescribers in our other regions can confirm that it's pretty much eliminated the wasted time, the wasted frustration, phone calls involved for all in incomplete, illegible, or incorrect hoofs. So you will see, if you're not a big portal user at the moment, that it does deliver benefits. We currently serve 3 home oxygen service regions: Northern Ireland, North East and East of England, and we were really pleased to have been awarded the East Midlands region, sitting nicely next to our East region. to give you a sense of scale of our operations, here are some numbers that might be of interest. You won't be quizzed on these later, but we serve about 19,000 oxygen patients. That sees our patient service centre, managed by Hazel, that sees us receiving almost 250,000 phone calls per year from patients and from prescribers. We're responsible for 75,000 cylinders in patients' homes. And apologies, has the screen just changed? Were you still seeing
Just gone black.
Sorry?
It's gone black, Claire.
Okay, apologies, my screen's flashed. So our technicians conduct about 20,000 oxygen installations per year. And in doing that, it sees them clock up what I think anyway is a massive 1.2 million miles on the roads. So hopefully you can see we're sizably into the home oxygen service. So just introduce to you now briefly the three main arms of our operations that the team will then go on to explain in more details. So
sorry, Claire.
Sorry.
I think my screen is still blank. Can't see any slides. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Let me. Are we back in the game?
Yep, we're here.
Yep, I can see now. Thank you.
You can, but I can't. It's just flashed off again.
Do you want me to go? If you go back to the previous one, Claire.
Apologies about this. This has not happened before. Okay, it's, yeah, I think I had some network issues. Let's see though.
We can see your slide pack. Is it coming through?
No, not for me. Right, excuse me one moment. Claire, if you'd like to entertain the troops. No,
okay.
my PowerPoint has crash closed, so I'll just need to open it again.
Okay, so this is our 5th webinar, and this is the only time we've had this glitch, but hey ho, this is sent to try us. And we are recording all of our webinars, so what we could circulate afterwards is one of the ones where we haven't had this glitch as well. Claire was about to go through the pyramid approach, where the patient really is at the heart of everything we do and deliver. This is also then encompassed at the 3 corners with our respiratory advisor, our home care technicians, and then on the other side our patient service centre as well. I'm just going to go on while Claire's trying to troubleshoot to introduce our home care technicians. So you'll all be pleased to know that we are 2Ping across the Air Liquide technicians. So for all of you with closer relationships, awareness of who you've been dealing with over previous years, and certainly for our patients, those familiar faces will be remaining, and they'll be led by Niall, who you've been a picture of before. Our technicians really are, we view them as our eyes and ears on the ground. So we have a real approach of wanting them to excel in their communication skills and showing real empathy towards our patients as well. So we do lots of further training in those areas to make sure the service we're delivering is of real quality, and we take pride in recognising that they are our reputation. So that's our home care technicians. I'm then really pleased to say that our Julie Owens, the respiratory advisor, will be trooping across and joining us with BOC. For those of you who haven't met Julie, Julie has been respiratory advisor with Air Liquide for I think the last 4 years, and comes with a wealth of nursing experience. So she's previously been a HOSEA nurse and has quite a varied background as well. So Julie will be working on some new projects that we bring with us, such as expanding on our Make Every Contact Count. So our MEC approach is really capitalising on our home care technicians being the eyes and ears for us. So there's an opportunity with that contact to make it more value added. So when we're going in to deliver equipment or to replenish equipment, it's an opportunity to give some further education through leaflets, so to inform our patients a bit more. So we're looking to expand that for East Mids. Also to be contacting different teams. So myself and Julie will be contacting all of you as teams to potentially join the end of your team meetings, whether that be 2 monthly, or whatever suits, to make sure that we're listening to your opinion, your voice on how transition has worked well for you and what you need ongoing as support from us. So it's about getting your feedback, keeping you up to date. And then also we'll be developing the patient newsletter and the prescribing newsletters, where we'll be sharing good practice, latest guidelines, what's going on up and down the country as well. So that's Julie, our respiratory advisor. And we're back on track now, Claire.
Thank you. Yeah, it didn't, anyway, PowerPoint didn't like me much for a moment. So Hazel, thank you, Claire, for getting us on track. So Hazel, over to you for the Patient Service Centre.
Thanks. So as I've introduced myself, I'm Hazel, so I look after the Patient Service Centre, which I'm very proud of, and as a team we're very proud of. And we will be the main point of contact for patients and prescribers like yourselves. We're based in Worsley, and I managed to find a very sunny picture of the building that we live in. It's not always like that for those of you that have been to Manchester. It's normally a bit dreary. At the Patient Service Centre, we've got quite a big team. There's around 40 of us, and the team consists of team leaders. We've got patient service advisors. We have some admin. We have analysts, Joe being one of those, and a quality coach. And between the team, there's many years experience. And ultimately, one of the kind of our key values is patient care. So it's at the heart of everything that we do in terms of the ethos really of our Patient Service Centre. So what the team will do and how you'll interact with them is that they'll take receipt of hoofs. So once it's been submitted through the portal, we then contact the patients or the carers and we complete the DBRA and we arrange for the installation to happen. And then the patients can ring us, so the patients can contact us and place their orders for replenishments, or if they have any problems with their equipment at all, then we'd help them by doing some troubleshooting or arranging an emergency visit for them. In terms of contacting us, there's a few ways you can do that. So you can contact us on email, or you can contact us via live chat. So when you're in the portal, there'll be a pop-up box that says, do you want to chat? So you can just chat directly with an advisor. And then there's the phone numbers. So we have two numbers. There's a patient 0800 number and there's a clinician's 0800 number, which should be live today, the 0800 number there, which will be the number you can ring to get through to us. And then, as Claire's already mentioned, fundamentally, the service that's being delivered by BOC from next week is very similar to what you already have delivered today. The key difference will be that all the hooves need to be submitted by the portal. So once we've received the hoof, then the rest of the process is very similar. So the Patient Service Centre would do desk-based risk assessments, and we arrange the visits, we speak to patients, we support the clinicians, then the technicians will do the field-based risk assessment and then complete the installation. Patients can reorder by calling us or by using the portal as well. There's a patient side of the portal. And then every 6 months we conduct the monthly, the 6 monthly risk assessments and service visits for the patients. Thanks, Claire.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the main point of the session, which is introduction of the Oxygen portal. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Claire. So just to give myself a quick reintroduction here, I am one of the 2 data analysts from BOC Home Care. I'm responsible for ad hoc and structured reporting, telling you how we're getting along, also providing internal business reporting as well. But on top of that, I'm also the main point of contact and the expert user for the Home Oxygen portal. So what that involves is I will provide advice for people who are new to on how to use it. I'll take any feedback they might have if there's any issues that might come up, try and do some troubleshooting, all sorts of things essentially. And for those who are curious, I'm very sorry to say that that is indeed the most flattering picture of me that I could find on short notice. But yep, that's who I am. But as for, you know, what's actually really important, what does the portal do? What are you gonna be able to do once you're registered? So most importantly is your bread and butter. It is your home oxygen order forms. You'll be able to submit them online through the portal. And there's a couple of nice features that come with doing it that way. One of which is that the portal will automatically error check the hoof that you're creating as you go along, because let's be fair to ourselves here, we're all only human. I mean, I make mistakes all the time, and I'm not even anywhere near as under pressure as you all are, of course, given the current circumstances and your roles. So let's say, for example, you're completing a hoof and you accidentally forget the patient's telephone number at the point you would type it in. You don't need to worry. The portal won't let you complete the hoof and send it off to us with that absent. It will tell you that's missing, and you can then go back and fill it in. Additionally, the hoof has also been laid out on the portal to reflect how it looks on the paper hoof. So you'll have individual sections you complete as you go along, which correspond to each section on the hoof. So part 1 of completing the hoof on the portal is just the same basically as how it looks when you complete part 1 of the hoof on a paper document, or if you've done it electronically before. But while that's the bread and butter of the portal, that's not all it can do. We also provide a patient dashboard. This is something you can use to look up patients inside your CCG or CCGs if you're aligned to them, in order to see their usage, their holdings, current demographic details, if they have any safety alerts against them, things like that. The beauty of this, by the way, is that you can access the portal on a tablet or a smartphone as well as a regular laptop or desktop PC. So you could, for example, as a respiratory nurse visiting in the community, go to a patient's house. Obviously, with current circumstances, that would be substantially different, but you would be able to show them their usage on the dashboard. And you could, for example, note that they may have used a lot more oxygen lately. And that could be an indicator that maybe their condition has changed and they need to be re-prescribed, because again, that happens. Some patients don't stay on the same prescription throughout the duration that they're on your caseload, so the portal can help you identify that and can allow you to have a more engaging conversation with them as a result. Now, over the course of time, as you get to use our portal, you'll build up an archive of hoofs that you've created and sent to us, and these can all be retrieved at any time. You can also in turn save them as PDF or Word documents. So I know that some of you have mentioned about System 1. If you need to upload a copy of that to System 1 for your record keeping, you can do so quite easily. Additionally, you can only normally see your own hoofs. For IG reasons, for information governance, that is, we don't allow everyone to see everyone else's hoofs. But we appreciate, of course, that you are indeed often working within teams quite closely tied with other colleagues. So on demand, we can actually set up what's called a prescribing group. And this essentially links a group of prescribers together so that they can see each other's hoofs in that archive, which can be quite helpful if you're, for example, say, looking after a patient in the absence of a colleague who could be on leave. You can find their previous hoof that way and then pick up where they've left off. So sometimes, of course, in the patient's lifespan that they're with BOC or with home oxygen, they will want it removed for various reasons. You could, for example, be dealing with a neonatal patient who no longer needs their oxygen because they've now fully recovered, you know, back to normality, or they could very well be a clusters patient who's out of cycle and they don't need their oxygen for the time being. You can submit removal requests through the portal from the patient dashboard, and the process for doing so doesn't involve anywhere near as much as completing a full hoof. You basically give us their address details, contact details, and the reason it needs to be removed, and that's it. The next feature I'll mention is something I hope that none of you will ever have to use, but is there in the event you do. If you were to come across, say, a safety incident with a patient, say you'd found them smoking unsafely, there is a risk of a trip or a fall, or indeed if they had a trip or a fall, there is a function, again, through the patient dashboard where you can actually notify us of that safety alert, and we'll respond to it promptly as a result. And lastly but not least, we also provide a wealth of resources on the portal as well. We provide a video library, which is a curated selection of YouTube videos, including how-to guides on how to use the portal. There's also other documents downloadable as Word or PDF or Excel, including the modality selection tool, which is something we'll be showing you later in this presentation. So I'm going to go through, not on the live basis, but just show you how it looks with the portal when you try and register. I will apologize to people who have already registered, because no doubt you'll be intimately familiar with this, but just so everyone's on the same page, I'm going to start from this point here. So to register, you simply need to go to www.bochealthcare.co.uk/HOP and then click register here on the page. There is an alternative web address as well, which is www.bochop.co.uk. You can get those bookmarks if you wish, and don't worry about noting them down right this second. We'll have them, of course, available at a later point for you as well. This is also the page where you can reset your password once you've registered, and also where you log in. So definitely make sure to stick that on your bookmarks on your laptop or PC. So when you click register here, it will take you to this page, which is where you then get to decide if you're registering as a patient or as a clinician, because it is a one-stop shop for both patients and clinicians. So if you're wishing to do so, you can absolutely tell your patients, hey, I'm going to put you on home oxygen, or you're already on home oxygen. Maybe to make your life a little easier, you can go online and order. Here's how you do it. Here's the web address. Give it a look. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to show you what it's like to register as a clinician. So you'd click the register as clinician button. So this next page, this screenshot here is only a small part of the registration form. It shows you some of the fields you'd have to complete. Any that get marked with a red asterisk are mandatory. And if you do miss any of them out, the portal will let you know in the same way as it would with an actual hoof. So I've just got a couple of brief notes I want to go through here with regards to registration, so everyone's on the same. We can only accept registrations from @nhs.net addresses or those that meet what's called DCB 1596 accreditation. What's that? I'm not going to bore you, Steph, with the dry technical details. That it's just a secure standard for sending patient identifiable data between two addresses, because you wouldn't, for example, send a hoof from a Gmail address or a Hotmail, for example. So it needs to meet that standard. If you're not sure if it does, just contact me, an email address I'll be giving you later, and I will help you through the process. I'll tell you if it is or if it isn't, and if it is not, how you get it sorted. Additionally, you need to make sure you're registering using your own email address. You can't use a generic email address. So it can't be, for example, a practice address if you're based at a surgery, or a HOSAR's email address. And it's similarly, you cannot share your account with anyone. It must be you who's only ever logging into your own account. We will also require for a professional registration code with each registration, unless you're registering as an administrator. But for your purposes, you'll be registering, of course, as a professional. So that can be your general medical council number, it can be your nursing register PIN, or any other appropriate professional number. Your access to Part A or Part B hoofs is determined by your role. If you're a Part B user, for example, you won't ever actually see the Part A hoof because you won't really need it. It kind of is redundant if you've got access to Part B. But that's determined by your role. If you do require access to Part B and have been given Part A, it's something you'll need to take with your HOS lead. And once we get approval for that, we can change it right away for you. So once your registration is complete and sent to us, we will just vet your details against the appropriate professional register, just confirm it's yourself, and then you'll get an email with a link to provide a password and a security question. That's done within 30 minutes of registering, whenever it may be. So you can quick turnaround on that in the event you do need to do an emergency prescription and you've not registered previously. But once you've then indeed set your password and a security question, you can log in and start prescribing right away. So as for logging in, it's from the same page as I mentioned before, bochealthcare.co.uk or bochop.co.uk. Now, when you log in, you may get asked to verify your IP address. So what this involves is it's what's called two-factor authentication. And again, I'll not bore you with what exactly that means, but to give you an actual example of something that happened to me that was like this, I recently got an email from Netflix saying there's a gentleman or person from Brazil who's tried to log in on your account. And I haven't actually ever been to Brazil, so it was a bit suspicious, that I must say. So what they did essentially was they checked what IP address was on the PC of that person against ones that I've logged in on before. There wasn't a match, so they emailed me to say, is that definitely you? I said no. That stopped them from trying to log in again. And it's the same principle here. It's just to make sure it's definitely you trying to log in and not, say, someone who's got hold of your email and your password. So what will happen is you'll get a link just to confirm it's you. It'll come to your email address that you've registered with. You just click that link and then you can log in again as normal. I should note that, like all online security systems, you only get a certain number of attempts to log in successfully, just in case you get your password wrong. If you do have any difficulty logging in, please don't hesitate to contact us via phone or email. So once you've actually logged in, this is the page that you'll be presented with. It's the hoof overview page. From here, you can track the progress of any hoofs and removals you've submitted as we process them. So if, for example, we had submitted the next day, you would see one in the next day tab there. And as it then is accepted, it'll move to the accepted box. And then once it's been successfully done, it will then move out of those boxes entirely and move into the archive. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to show you how we make a new hoof. And that means we click on the Create Hoof button there. So we're going to be creating a hoof, but of course we have to be creating a hoof for someone in specific. So who's that going to be? So for this demonstration, this is a fictional patient named James Smith, who, if he were real, I hope doesn't actually look like a stick man, but I apologize, my artistic skills aren't that great. But anyway, just to give you some key facts here. James is a 65-year-old gentleman who suffers from COPD. He's currently in hospital, and in this scenario, we want to discharge him home pretty sharpish to free up hospital capacity. He's been tested for COVID-19 and his results are negative. So for the purposes of this scenario, we're going to arrange for James to have a static concentrator and standard ambulatory cylinders. Now, I apologize for mentioning this, but just so it's clear, any clinical information I'm using here is just for a fictional patient and is just for illustrative purposes only. Please, of course, use your own discretion and knowledge for what any given patient may require. And additionally, we'll, of course, go through that later with the modality selection tool. So once you click on Create a Hoof, you'll get taken to this page. And I apologize if the screenshot's small to see there, but this is, again, the same fields as you would see on the top part of the hoof, where you fill in the patient's name, surname, etc. So something I should mention is that when you're dealing with patient data, if you pop their NHS number in firstly, it will do one of two things. It will firstly query the NHS spine service, and if it finds a match based on NHS number and date of birth, it will pull their data through for you. So it'll pull through their name, their address, etc. Saves you having to type it in. But additionally, if they're a known patient to us, which will of course be the case for any patient you currently have on your caseload, because we'll be taking them on from Air Liquide, when you pop their NHS number in, it will offer you the option to also fill their details, so you can then pull through their most recent address details and name and such. So again, that'll save you time, and that'll be the case for all the patients that we'll be taking on as of next week. In the very rare instance of which the patient is new to oxygen and they're also not on the spine or the spine can't find them, you would need to provide their information from scratch. But because that's then going to be passed through to us and will then become part of our patient base, that's the only time you need to do it for that particular patient. And the odds of that happening are quite unlikely as is anyway. I should mention, by the way, that there is a COVID-19 drop-down on the first page, drop-down menu that is, and that needs to be completed with every hoof we receive. These are the 4 options you get when you're selecting it. So I'm just going to give you a hint here, because of course currently of what's happening with test and trace and the pressure that service is currently under. I've seen, for example, instances of hoofs being sent to us where they mention they're awaiting the results for swab tests, but they're not quite sure yet what the outcome of that will be. If you are awaiting that swab test return and they're still discharging them, please choose suspected when you're selecting the patient's COVID-19 status from that menu. The reason we ask for this is so we can ensure we go about the installation of the patient's oxygen in a COVID-19 safe manner. If there's any evidence of them having COVID, we will of course make sure to be wearing the correct PPE, following the correct social distancing procedures, doing installations remotely as appropriate. So if you have any suspicion whatsoever that they have COVID symptoms, then make sure to note that. Better to be safe than sorry, really. Now, this is specifically for the patient, I should say, but there will be a section later where I will give you advice on how to tell us if it's not the patient, but someone who is at the property who may be COVID positive. That can be particularly useful in the case of care homes, for example. So this screenshot now, as you see, is actually the completed information for part 1 of the hoof for James, our fictional patient here. So these are already fields that are on the hoof, and they get transferred to the appropriate fields on any electronic copies of the document that you make. So to continue now, we can click Save and Proceed. There is a button that's on the bottom of the form. It's just out of shot on this particular screenshot. It's at this point when you click Save and Proceed that if you've missed anything off the portal, or rather off the hoof that's mandatory, it will let you know and tell you what's missing. So, of course, though, sometimes we do fill in fields, but we don't fill them in correctly. Again, we're only human, we're all under pressure, it's understandable. So you might, to go back to the telephone number example, you may have filled it in, but may have missed a digit off, or maybe you typed incorrectly. And then you realize as you're creating the hoof, oh, I need to go back and change that. Not to worry, you can do that. On every section of the hoof, apart from the very first, there is a back button that will allow you to return to the previous section and amend it as appropriate. And you can keep going back as far as necessary to make changes. So our next page is part 2 of the hoof, where you can provide the patient's GP information, their clinical code, if they're on NIV or CPAP, or their paediatric status. I'll mention for GP practice here, there are a handful of surgeries across the country, possibly some in your area, what are called satellite surgeries. So this is a number of surgeries in the same location. And when you type in the postcode for the surgery in that field there, it will give you a drop-down menu to pick the surgery you want. So if it's just a standalone surgery, you'll get one option, and when you click on it, it'll fill in all their details automatically, so you don't need to worry about that. If it's a satellite surgery, you'll get multiple options, so you can pick whichever one you want. And then once we've done that, again, we can click Save and Proceed. And of course, if we need to make any changes, we can click back to return to the previous section and make amendments. So this next page is part 3, and this is where we provide the details of the hospital or community service, etc., that the patient's been under the care of, as well as any ward details if they're appropriate. Like on the regular hoof, this page is completely optional. If you don't need to fill in, you can go straight through to the next section. But I would advise, if you have the information to hand, if it's appropriate, to fill it in. It's just that way we have a line of contacts in the event that you're not available. If you're, for example, signing off for the day and we need to contact the ward later in the evening if we're trying to do an emergency discharge, that can be quite helpful to have. But otherwise, we're going to click on Save and Proceed and go to the next section. So this is the actually really interesting part. This is, of course, where we get to pick what people get. So we've already determined for James that he's going to need a standard concentrator and standard ambulatory cylinders in this particular case. But before I show you how prescribing actually works on the portal, it's probably best that we discuss how you pick a modality and the best treatment for your patient. What I will mention is that if you're a Part A prescriber, the options available to you will be limited to static concentrators, static cylinders, and in very specific cases, standard ambulatory cylinders only. If you do require other specialist modalities, you'll need to refer the patient for the appropriate respiratory assessment. But otherwise, that's the first part of the hoof creation process that I've just demonstrated to you. So thank you very much for listening to that. I hope you found that informative. At this point, does anyone have any questions at all? You may raise your hand virtually to speak out on the chat, or in turn, if you want to put in the conversation window as well, I can answer them from there. Looks like we haven't had any, but that's fine. I will mention, by the way, that of course this is all as we go along. If something does crop up that you would have liked to have asked earlier, you're more than welcome to ask it later on. But for the moment, I'm going to hand over to Claire Murphy to discuss the modality selection tool.
Okay, hello everybody. So we've developed a tool to support you with choosing your ambulatory modalities. And I say this position for your ambulatory modalities because we all know that for any long-term oxygen therapy, over 3 hours essentially is a concentrator needs to be positioned and needs to go in, and that's because the concentrator is the most cost-effective option for our patients. So with the modality selection tool, this is a chance for you to look at what flow and what hours a day results in what kind of modality. So if I'm not sure if that makes sense, but let's demonstrate it anyway. So to begin with, when you approach this, let's look at the consumables that we want to give to our patients. So Hazel, if you could input some things for me, if we could choose to have a cannula, first of all, and then let's opt for a prescription of 2 litres a minute, and we'll do that 14 hours a day. And let's see what the tool comes up with. So we can see there the suitable modalities. In the green is the portable concentrator, followed by liquid oxygen and then ambulatory cylinders. So what's behind this thinking? Well, This tool has been fed with a number of different factors, including the rental cost and the carbon footprint. So we've come up with, well, actually, I think it's Joe's colleagues have come up with that calculation, and it shows that the portable concentrator is the green, so the cheapest and most sustainable option for a patient with this kind of prescription. So that's all the background behind it. As you can see there, the lightweight cylinders would be the most expensive and poor option for this patient, considering that we've said 14 hours a day would be their use. Sorry, the sound is being distorted. Has anyone else got problems with the sound?
Yeah, it sounds really rustly.
Yeah.
Is it my chin? Is it the fact my microphone's on the chin?
I think it might be you that's, yeah.
Is it better now?
That's loads better, yeah.
It was my chin then, God. Okay, let's try another one. Yeah, thank you. Let's try for, everyone's saying thanks. Yeah, sorry everyone. Let's go for 4 litres a minute for 6 hours a day. And let's see, and let's just choose some lifestyle options as well. So let's choose that we've got a secondary address and short breaks and see what it comes up with. So now this time it's saying transportable concentrator is the cheapest and the most sustainable option. So I don't know if you're all aware, but with the contracts now, we have to look at carbon footprint and we have to look at sustainability. So those are factors that are embedded into this modality tool alongside what's the rental cost to you. So transportable concentrator would be the way to go here. Yet again, this is another one where it's saying the lightweight cylinders really aren't the best option at all. So just think about that with your prescribing. 4 litres a minute is a higher flow and 6 hours a day a lot. So if someone had lightweight cylinders, they would go to need them replenished an awful lot from us. And that cylinder then has a carbon footprint that treks quite up and down the country to be refilled and trunked back to the depot and then out to the patient. So that's the thought process behind the modality selection tool. So just to recap, in case my chin was doing the talking in the very beginning, this isn't for long-term oxygen therapy. You don't need a tool to advise you on that because it should be the concentrator. We shouldn't see any transportable concentrators doing the job of a concentrator. The concentrator is really cost efficient and sustainable. This tool is really for you to look at modalities for ambulation for your patient. So I hope that makes sense in the end. Any questions on the modality selection tool? And this is embedded in the portal as well for you to use. So you just need to select the consumable, input your flow, input your hours. You can do some lifestyle boxes as well. If you were to choose cluster headache, it's going to say demand valve is the most cost-effective option. Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Try and not have such a debacle with sharing screen again.
We were all confident that we were on the home straight last webinar, and we've had quite a few little issues. Yeah. Whether it be the presentation, my chin, what's next?
We will see. Okay. So it's back to you, Claire.
Okay, so I'm now going to go through the new equipment changes for East Mids on behalf of NARL, essentially. So here is a list of the new equipment coming into the region. So we've got the Respironics Everflow Static Concentrator. We've got the New Life Intensity 10 High Flow Concentrator. We've got the portable concentrator, the G5. Cylinders are much the same, but we'll go through the specifics. The conserving device and the demand valve we'll go through on the following slides. So this one I'm really pleased to introduce to you. Our concentrators on the whole are quite big and ugly and noisy, but the Everflow is very different. So it comes in two different delivery options. It has a standard flow of 1 to 5 litres or a lower flow of 0.1 to 1 litre. But what makes it different for patient is that it's a lot quieter. So that noise can be a huge issue. So it's quieter, smaller and lighter. If you look at the weight on the slide there, you can see it's 14 kilograms as in comparison to the standard, which is 24 kilograms. It uses a lot less electricity, and our patients get the electricity refunded, but it's a lot more kind of cost effective and very reliable. So a really good workhorse. Alongside that, you don't have to worry about filters being placed and whether your patient looks after them, because everything's internal. So the only thing we ask is that they keep the vents at the back of the machine dust free. So the airflow is really good. And for any of you that have prescribed transportable as opposed to a concentrator, we're moving forward saying we want the concentrator, the Everflow, to be put in and not see transportables used for 24/7 all year round use. Thank you. This is the high flow concentrator. So I think standardly you have high flows that deliver up to 8 litres. These now deliver up to 10 litres. And it's just greater capability for, in particular, your interstitial lung disease patients. So you could have 2 of these piggyback together. And what you would do is you would put the additional request in the additional comments of your hoof as well, if you specifically want a high flow to go in. Thank you. Portable concentrator range. So with Air Liquide in the region, I believe you've had the G2 and the G3. We're going to keep Air Liquide's equipment until they actually break down, but we're also bringing in the new G5. The G5 allows the patient to have a pulse setting of 1 to 6. And although you can see on the table there, that's the same as the G2, the G5 is a lot more reliable and nearly just over a kilogram lighter than the G2. The battery charge time is less and the noise level is good as well. But we're just looking at battery situations. So prescribers have said, well, patients normally have a second battery, and that's not part of the contract moving forward. But we do recognise that when patients get to need pulsed of 5 or a pulse mode of 6, then the battery life is a lot shorter. So we're working on a criteria to say, actually, if they meet that level, then that's when we should look at recommending a second battery. So it's not going to be standard for all patients. So that's the portable concentrator range that you've got for East Mids. Static concentrator. So this is the ZH cylinder. We use this as our backup cylinder. You don't have to request that on your hoof. It will automatically be added when you order your standard concentrator. And when you go into patient's home, you want to be able to see where they place this. We have issues where patients, because it is bigger and quite ugly, they might put it under the stairs, or we've had them in the shed, or really hidden, tucked away. And you just want to remind them that when you've got a power cut at 2 or 3 in the morning, they need to be able to access this really quickly. We have had patients before who have got really glorious vine leaf plants wrapped around it. That hasn't added an extra risk for us, and it made it look more decorative in the home, but they do need to be visible close by the patient. So that's the backup. They certainly the big. Here now we've got the portable cylinder range. So we've got CDs to DDs to ZAs, ZAs being the lighter weight ones. And you can also see the flow rates, which will differentiate what cylinder you may have placed in the patient's home. So a DD will deliver 2 and 4 litres, where the CD do 1 to 15. So that's our cylinder range. The conserving device that we're using in East Mids from next week will be the CHAD Evolution. So it allows a pulse mode of 1 to 7 in 1 litre increments. And we all know that you put your cylinder to 4 litres, and then the pulse device is what you'd put to your litres that you want to give to the patient. With this conserving device, it also gives a continuous flow of 2 litres a minute. Patient feedback in other regions is that it's easier to use. So it's a simple push button on and the arrow will go to the litres and it will automatically switch off if the oxygen flow stops as well. So that's our CHAD Evolution conserving device. Demand valve, I'm really happy to say that this is coming into East Mids, and from speaking to some of you, this has been long overdue. So for the last 4 years, the demand valve has been available in our East region and North East, and it's been a real game changer for our cluster headache patients. There isn't a great deal of research and literature behind it because it is still relatively new, but patient feedback is that it's a big success. So for you, when prescribing, if a patient has oxygen to be trialled, they've been optimised on all medications, then the demand valve is the way to go because it gives a pressurised hit of 100% oxygen. So if you think of it along lines of when Entonox is used for either pain relief or in labour, it's that pressurised hit of oxygen that makes the difference in that cluster cycle. We deliver it with the handset, which is reusable and can be cleaned, and the mouthpiece, we provide 2 on installation and then we'll deliver replenishments as needed. The patient must be assessed, shown to be clinically effective for the patient, so oxygen needs to be indicated. We're currently in discussions with the NHS, with Wendy Bradford and Priya as well, about how this will be added, as they view it's probably going to be as a contract variation, which means there'll be a pathway for cluster headache patients to then allow them to get the demand valve. But certainly for all of you as prescribers, when you see something clinically indicated, I would urge you all to kind of step forward and say, this is what I would like for my patient, because it's available from the 19th onwards, pending some pathway reviews. Thank you. Are there any questions at all on any of the equipment that will be coming into East Mids? For any of you that rent equipment for assessment purposes, also if you can just let us know and we'll make sure that your equipment is swapped out as soon as possible. And for those of you who rent equipment but think actually you'd quite like to have a G5 for rental, or you would like to have the conserving device, just let us know. You can have whatever rental equipment you need. If you just have cylinders, I'd urge you all to have a conserving device because that will help the longevity of the oxygen as well. No questions? Okay. Thank you.
So we'll move on and go back to the portal. Joe.
Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, so we've gone through looking through all of our equipment that we provide. We've gone through the modality selection tools. So this is the point where we say, let's arrange actual equipment for our patient here. So I'm going to go through this step by step for you now. We're going to provide James, our fictional patient here, with a concentrator on 2 litres a minute for 16 hours a day. And with that, he's going to have standard ambulatory cylinders on a variable flow of 2 to 4 litres a minute for 4 hours a day. All of that will be nasal cannula. So since one of our flow ranges is variable, the first thing we would pick is variable for litres per minute. And then since our hours are set for both our modalities, we would pick standard. So general rule there, if anything's variable, any point, pick variable for 5 hours per day or litres per minute as appropriate. So having picked those ranges now through those radio buttons, the window is refreshed and you can see that we've now got a drop-down menu for adding items. So doubtless you've all used some sort of online shopping service. You could, for example, have used Amazon, Argos, you name it. I'm quite a fan of Deliveroo myself, if I must say. And the way that they all work is that they all have what's called a basket system. So you essentially add items to the basket, and then once you're then done, you take the basket to the checkout. And it works kind of similarly here in that you pick one item at a time, add it to your basket, and then take the hoof through to completion from there. So to start with, we're going to add a static concentrator to the basket, which again, we're going to fill out with 2 litres a minute for 16 hours per day on cannula. One thing I will mention here before we do actually show you how this works is that the portal will limit you to requesting 24 hours a day maximum on all modalities combined. So you're not, for example, stopped from ordering a concentrator on 24 hours a day. But once you've then ordered that, you can then order anything else because it would then put the hours per day above 24. So just something to bear in mind. So we've selected Start Concentrate on the drop down and we filled in the fields here, and you can see how these options have now opened up. Because we have a flow rate that's compatible with one of the masks we provide, for example, we can actually arrange a mask for James in this case if we wanted to. In this case, 24% or 28%. You may have patients who occasionally want multiple mask types, and you can select more than one at once by control clicking on the masks there. So we could select both of them for James if we wanted. But for the purposes of this demo, it's just going to be cannula. I should note as well that if you have a variable flow, of course, that will then open up more options. If you have, say, for example, 8 to 15, you will get a 35%, 40%, 60% and NR mask available as options. NR mask being non-rebreathe, so if you want to arrange that for cluster patients, you would need a flow rate that covers at least 10 litres a minute. Since we're happy here, by the way, with the concentrator we've put on the system, we're going to click Add to Order. I'll go back to something Claire mentioned before, which is that if you want a high flow concentrator, you will need to request that in the additional patient information section. So you'd fill out this as normal with the appropriate flow rates, but you would then ask later for a high flow. Otherwise, we would provide the appropriate number of concentrators to meet the required flow, which is usually 1 for every 5 litres a minute. So if, for example, you are ordering 8 litres a minute for a patient and don't want a high flow, they would get 2 machines by default that would be daisy chained together. If it was a high flow, we just give them 1, of course, essentially give them the necessary equipment. Now, you can also request low flow concentrators. You don't actually specifically ask for those, though. You simply fill in the appropriate flow rate. So if you wanted to give a patient, say, half a litre of oxygen on a low flow concentrator, just type in 0.5. You don't then need to note elsewhere that it needs to be a low flow. We'll make sure they get the equipment they need automatically. So we're now going to add in the standard ambulatory cylinders. Specific options for this modality, such as if flow regulators are required, will also appear here. So you can hopefully see on that screenshot that there's low flow, microflow, and conserving device. If you want a demand valve, like what Claire mentioned before, you'll need to ask for that in the same way as you would a high flow concentrator, which I'll be demoing in a little bit. And I mentioned before about the way the basket works. You can see that because we've now added the static concentrator, it's appeared beneath the area where you order oxygen modalities has now been saved. You may very well, of course, want to delete a modality and change it. If you've made, for example, want to change the flow rate, again, it happens. You can click the delete button next to the modality and that will take it off the basket. Or if you want to start fresh entirely, you can click the reset and clear basket option on the top right to completely wipe it clean. So we've added our ambulatory cylinders to the order now, and we're happy with what's going to be given to James. You can at this point note if the patient needs a tracheostomy mask. I don't know if you can see it because of the resolution on the screenshot, but the option is currently grayed out. This will remain locked and grayed out and set at no unless you've picked a mask previously for at least one of your modalities. So if you want a patient to have a tracheostomy mask, make sure to order an appropriate mask for them while doing so for, say, the concentrator. This is also where we can pick the delivery time frame. So again, it's same as you've seen before, standard 3 business day, next calendar day, or urgent 4 hour. We want to discharge James on a next day basis, so that's what we picked here, next calendar day. So the final section of the HOOF covers temporary supplies, additional patient information, and also clinical contact details. So additional patient information is what I mentioned before, where you would enter in if they wanted a high flow concentrator or a demand valve, you just write it in there. This is for clinical information specifically. If you want to provide contextual information that's not clinical in nature, I'll come to that in just a moment because we have a special feature that can do that for you. The temporary supply fields are for you to arrange holiday or respite HOOFs for patients if necessary. We've had examples in the past, for say, of patients who go and have a second supply, a caravan, but because their caravan does not have a sustained power supply, they obviously aren't suitable for a concentrator, so you can order cylinders for them through that. That can also just, again, be a temporary or permanent setup as appropriate. The final thing on this page I'll mention is the HOOF addendum. So if you click yes on that, it will actually expand the page out into a larger text box that allows you to write in quite a large amount of contextual information. So this could be useful for advising us if a patient, for example, is not fluent in English, or if their family isn't either, for that matter, and if so, that we can then make sure an interpreter is provided. I mentioned before as well about COVID-19. If you are, for example, discharging a patient to a care home and there are known COVID-19 cases in the home, but the patient themselves is not COVID-19 positive or suspected, that's where you tell us. It's again so we can make sure to take the appropriate precautions. But you can do other things here as well. You can write in if they're a smoker, if they require high visibility tubing. It's essentially anything that would help us with the installation and make things as easy as possible for the patient as well, and their family and carers. But since we've done all the fields here for the moment, we're going to click Save and Proceed to go to the review stage. So this is where you get to review the HOOF in its entirety. The screenshot cuts off the top half of it, which is where you get to see what you've written down. So if you want to make any changes, this is a point where you would do so by clicking the back button. Once you're happy with the HOOF, you can then click the HOCF and IHORF boxes, that's your consent form and risk forms, to confirm they've been completed. Something I'll mention, because it's been fed back to me separately from previous webinars, if you're wondering where you can obtain those, you can see there it says, for more information on the IHORF, click here. If you click on that, it will take you to actually download the IHORF, and it's actually a combined consent form and IHORF in a single document. So you can have those handy there for you to get a hold of if need be, if you don't have them otherwise. If you want to arrange for confirmation of installation to go elsewhere as well, once we have actually agreed the visit and raised in our system, you can request it goes to a different address by typing that in there in place of where I put my address, which is joe.dillon@boc.com. But otherwise, we're happy with that, so we're going to submit the HOOF by clicking on Create HOOF. So once you've submitted the HOOF, you'll get an email confirmation like the one you see on the bottom of the screen. You'll get email confirmations as the HOOF is progressed, or if indeed if it ends up being cancelled, you'll be notified by as well if you can't get a hold of anyone, for example. We can also at this point download the HOOF as a PDF or Word document to be saved to System 1 or EMIS as appropriate. You can do that as soon as the HOOF has been submitted. Two things. We only provide confirmation emails for HOOFs otherwise to the prescriber who submitted them. You're not going to get a ton of emails going to the HOS AR service nominated mailbox, for example. It'll just go strictly to the prescriber who sent it. We're also going to be providing daily uploads of reports covering new and removed patients. These will only be accessible by certain users inside specific reporting groups, which I'll be covering in a moment. But once we've submitted the HOOF, you can actually then track its progress, like I mentioned before. So you can see here the HOOF we've done for James has now appeared in the next day box. And as that is then progressed, it will move to accepted, and then it will disappear and go into the archive. If you click on Search Archived, that will take you to the HOOF archive, and you can search your HOOFs for your HOOFs through there. So that's HOOF creation, but there are other things the portal can do that I'll mention now. There is the video library. This is where we curate and upload YouTube links for videos that we would feel were helpful to yourselves, and also available to patients as well if appropriate. So for example, we've got things like how to actually use the Home Oxygen portal, which are videos narrated by yours truly here. We also have safety videos on home oxygen use, including things about ignition and slip, trips and falls. We also have a safety message from Claire, who was on earlier. And we've also recently uploaded a link to the Hands, Face, Space video on COVID-19 that shows firsthand how easy it is to spread anything basically through physical touch and contacts. We also have a download section of the portal. This is where you get your hands on the modality selection tool, along with other things such as the Home Oxygen Service Clinician's Handbook, any newsletters and such that we might put out there. You can again download them just by clicking on them. And then we have what's called the view only role. So the view only role is provided only to certain approved users, and it allows access to reports that we upload. They're usually in Excel format, and you can download them to your PC by clicking on them. These can include things like patient lists, billing reports, reports on KPI performance, things like that. So first off, if you are approved for a view only role, access to what reports you do get to see is determined in a number of ways. When we upload reports, we align them to a certain locality CCG when uploading, but we can also align them to what are called custom reporting groups to fine-tune access. So if there's a specific report that has to go to only certain people and no one else can see it, even if they are in the same CCG, we can create that group, put the approved users in there, and then make sure only people in that group can see that report. But we can also give reports access on a file to person basis. So if there's a very specific report that needs to go to just one person, we can make sure they get it. I should note that view-only users cannot prescribe oxygen on the Home Oxygen portal. It's through this interface that I'll be providing daily uploads of reports that show new and removed patients. I'll be covering reports in more detail on a future webinar, though, to go through that more thoroughly. So I just want to take a moment to thank you all for listening. I hope you found that informative and not too dry. I will, of course, be available through the email that I provided before and will provide again before the end to contact with regards to if you're having any issues or any concerns, if you've got any queries or feedback. But as for what you can do right now, if you've not already registered, please do feel free to do so. The live portal is ready and waiting for you to do that. If you have registered, you can actually start to test out how you complete hoofs on there. I would just ask, of course, that you do not actually send us any hoofs until Monday next week. Until then, please use Air Liquide's actual portal to send hoofs. But if you want to just play around with it, get used to it, you can do that. The video library is also open for you to have a look at as well. If you may very well want to take a look at that now, because the material in there you'll probably find useful in your role anyway. The modality selection tool is also available for you to download. So again, you can take a look at that. And other files are also available, like the HCP handbook. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the section on the Home Oxygen portal. So thank you very much again for your time and attention. I really, really appreciate it. Does anyone at this point have any questions they would like to ask? Again, please raise your hand virtually or otherwise just type in the chat and I'll pick them up. I think we've got one firstly from, I think it was Abby, was that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, it's not a dire question, just got curious when you were speaking about hoof bees doing via portal. What is the cutoff time, please? For example, is there a cutoff point to send hoofs for an urgent delivery, please?
No. If we were to receive a 4-hour at say midnight, it would be done by 4 o'clock. 4 hours later, essentially, the following morning. There is no cut-off point.
Right. Thank you. Cheers.
And Karen?
Yeah, hi. Previously with Air Liquide, if we've wanted to raise an urgent hoof and we've been in the patient home, we've been able to do a verbal hoof by phoning this through and then following it up by sending a hoof through. Are we still able to do this so that we're not delaying getting that oxygen in?
We would ask that you submit the hoof at the point that you want it through the portal. You can do that online, as I say, from a tablet or a smartphone. In the absolute event that you cannot get onto the portal for some reason, if there's just simply no reception, you've got no way of doing so, we will take a verbal hoof in that case. But we would ask that you then submit a hoof within 24 hours to us. Otherwise, it may result in the oxygen being removed.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, but again, of course, because this is an ongoing learning process, if there's anything that you do wish to ask me, feel free to send it through to boc.hop@nhs.net and I will get back to you and get that resolved for you. But otherwise, I'm really looking forward to working with you all. I hope you all stay safe and sound in these times. And I will now pass it on to Hazel to continue the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so with we wanted to take some time today to take you through some safety aspects which are obviously very important for patients and are our prime focus to protect patients, our employees and the communities in which we're operating and our patients are living in. So I hope you don't mind that we spend 10 minutes just highlighting some key safety aspects of the whole range of activities that we do across our service.
Okay, to start with, we have patient handbooks that we deliver to patients alongside our equipment manuals. So they're specifically for either paediatric or adult. And throughout all of them, we look at the dangers of smoking whilst on oxygen. So when we consider this for paediatrics, we're looking at parents or carers or anyone in that household. And it's the same approach for adults, it's either themselves or anyone else in the household as well. The equipment manuals cover anything that's been installed, looking at troubleshooting, how to do safety do's and don'ts, cleaning and maintenance also. So this is something that we deliver to patients to ensure that safety is adhered to at all times. I mentioned briefly when I talked about the respiratory advisor role about make every contact count. This has been successfully delivered over the last 5 to 6 years together with the NHS. So we've picked a range of topics to target as part of a campaign. So we've delivered MEC on winter health for all of our patients, nutrition, trips and falls, heat wave, managing the heat, and also through our clinical services and our specialist respiratory physios, we've also delivered managing breathlessness as well. You can see there we've done one on medication compliance. And just to explain a little bit about that, this is due to technicians feeding back concerns on delivering oxygen, that they would see a pile of pills by the patient that haven't been taken. So we thought, what is the opportunity for us to make any kind of difference here and improve the safety related to medication hoarding or not taking medications? So together with the NHS, we had a programme which essentially our technicians on entering the patient's home used a 4-set question, which would then elicit a yes/no response. So we were very mindful that we weren't training our technicians to be pharmacists. So it was only a yes/no response from the patient. Do you know how to take your medications was one, for example. And from those responses, this was then cascaded upwards to our patient service centre in Worsley, who then fed back concerns to the GP or the patient's pharmacist. And for some of those, it was about having a medication review. For some of those, it was a case of they weren't actually using any inhalers. So we looked at everything, inhalers to all their medications. In some cases, patients had blister packs, dosage box put in as well. So that's what we mean when we did MEC on medication compliance. But this is something we're looking to expand, and it's all about getting safety information and a way of our patients managing their condition better. So the more information, the better. So that's MEC for us. Now, oxygen hazards, and when we talk about safety, there are so many different hazards we have to think of, from general to how oxygen's stored to the fire safety issues. So from the beginning through our patient safety books to our equipment manuals, we cover these issues. So we have to look at the risk of fire and explosion, the fact that if you've got cylinders there, you've got pressurized canisters. Also looking about oxygen enrichment, and even to some healthcare professionals, they're not aware of what oxygen enrichment means. Just to recap, I'm sure we all know that if you're using nasal specs or a face mask, you've got oxygen leaking around that area. And that leakage means that it's on your clothes, in your home, on your bedding, on your furniture. It's an oxygen enriched environment. So that's beyond the norm, which poses an additional risk if you then have a spark and potential flame there as well. Musculoskeletal issues. How do our patients mobilise and move our equipment? How do they use the cylinders and get about what they need to do every day within the home or outside of the home? And that moves us on to slips, trips, falls. Our patients are hypoxic, so that naturally puts them at higher risk. And then to put in the oxygen, that tubing can then put them at even more of a risk of slip, trips and falls. And that was the background for us developing a DVD to share with patients as well. There's also the potential for faulty cylinders or tampering of equipment. That tampering can be from our patients when they just will increase the oxygen flow to try and manage what they feel is their hypoxia, or whether it be other hands of carers or potentially paramedics, or to the other extreme, grandchildren just tampering with our equipment as well. We talk about safe storage of our equipment. So where should our cylinder be? What sort of quantities should they have in their home? So we wouldn't want to install more than 8 cylinders because that's what our risk assessment is deemed safe up to. So we wouldn't go beyond that quantity. We teach our patients when they use cylinders to keep the valve closed as well, and keep our equipment in well ventilated areas, so not next to any fires or heating. And just to be specific, open fires or equipment would need to be 3 meters away, and electric fires would be 1.5 meters away. And I'm sure that's standard with how Air Liquide was as well. The main difference for us is to do with our liquid oxygen storage. So within our regions, we don't have liquid storage within the patient's home. And this is again due to our risk assessment and what is passed and what is failed. And we are aware that in East Mids, there is some locked storage within the patient's home. So we're having to manage that change to put it outside or consider a different modality. Going back to fire safety, it's oxygen enrichment and looking at naked flames. So whether that be ovens, candles, fires, with an oxygen enriched environment, it's the perfect combination for a fire. And we've been informed that the cost to the fire service or the cost to the taxpayer is, from the start of the fire involving oxygen to the end, you're talking about £1 million. And sadly, these things do happen as well. Smoking around oxygen or using e-cigarettes, I'm not sure how it's been in the past for you, but we have a really clear approach on this where it's not tolerated and it's not okay to do. And as clinicians, we know that the guidelines are suggesting we shouldn't prescribe to patients smoking, but it's not insisting on it. So we do everything we can to enforce a health change with patients not smoking. And for those that do, if they choose to do so unsafely, we take it very seriously. We created the fire break and we're really proud of that. But if a patient chose to take away the fire break, we would also be returning out to them that day to put it back in and letting them know the purpose of it being there. Oils and creams, now that's quite been on everyone's radar over the last few years more and more. So we don't definitely advise on specific types, but it's about you as a prescriber to do the risk benefit, to establish what's best for that patient and speak to the pharmacist to see what the alternatives are, because on the whole, there's probably a good, safer alternative. But then for some cases, there won't be. So if you've got a patient with skin cancer, there may be no other option to topically treat that problem. And then you just do a care plan to see, well, how can we lower and mitigate that risk further? Is it through making sure everything is washed at 60 degrees? Is it looking at how long it takes for that oil or cream to be soaked into the skin and the patient being off oxygen for that time? So it's scratching our heads together to see what's best for the patient. And we also, looking back to storage, we don't put any cylinders on beds or soft furnishings, and that's due to recent experience of when things can go wrong as well. We give further advice on electronic devices, and just thinking generally to do with makeup, to do with hairspray, to do with sun cream. All of these things have to be considered when oxygen is involved. What is the best option that our patients can use? So for us, safety is absolutely fundamental to everything we do. Thank you.
Get myself off mute. Hello. So I mentioned earlier that from a patient service centre, we start the process by doing a desk-based risk assessment. So we do that by following a guided script. So the advisors follow a sequence of questions, which brings out some of the responses that we need from the patient or the carer. And then once we've confirmed that those risks are okay and that they've been addressed, then we pass the information over to the technician so that he can then go and do his installation. When the technician arrives at the property, he'll do a further risk assessment, which we call the field-based risk assessment. And while he or she is there, they'll be looking for other hazards, so clutter, any trip hazards, any signs of smoking, drug misuse, etc. And there are rare occasions while at the property that the technician might feel that the exposure to the risk might be too high. So at that point, the technician would then contact the respiratory advisor for the region, or the clinical lead in terms of Claire, and then contact yourself as a prescriber to explain what risks have been identified in the property, and then agree really on what the best approach for the patient will be in terms of the installation. Ultimately, the aim is to make sure that the oxygen's prescribed safely, and that we don't put it into anywhere that and create an unsafe situation. I do think it's good to share as well that we don't just wait for risk assessment or formal risk assessment to assess risks. During the DBRA and the FBRA processes, it's all identified in a very structured way, but the teams are very alert to understanding what the risks could be. So if a technician goes into a property and sees it with a lit ashtray, a lit cigarette in an ashtray, he'd flag that, or she would flag that, so that we could address it. Same on the phone with the advisors. So they're speaking to patients and the patient sounds confused, or it sounds as though there's some other risks going on there is some safeguarding problems, then they again will flag that. Or if a patient might mention, oh, I nearly tripped over my tubing, then we just pick that up and then we address it. We'd let you know as a prescriber, and we also would then send the technician to go and do a visit if needed as well.
So now we move on to smoking in series. So I've already highlighted how we take this really seriously, but I also just want to emphasize now how everything we do is in collaboration with you. So we work with you, not against you. So I just want to outline the exact process of when patients are smoking oxygen. We do have patients who smoke, but smoke safely with their oxygen therapy. So what happens is on installation, we educate the patient on the dangers of smoking. We show them the DVD, and this really highlights the 20-minute rule. So looking at, the oxygen enrichment, and then the need to turn off the oxygen for 20 minutes and step outside when you can, or open the window before you ignite the e-cigarette or light the cigarette. So it's all about reinforcing the dangers of smoking. It's in their literature, in their handbooks. So you're trying to say, let's be really sensible here and make informed decisions. We also let the fire service know, and they may do a home visit as well, just to see if there's anything more that needs to be put into place. So that's the start. Then if we're alerted that a patient has been found to be smoking on oxygen, our alerts can come from GPs, from yourselves, from district nurses, from paramedics, anybody really. When it's the first time, we'll go back and we will try and give all of that education and information again. So really making sure the patient's informed of the risks that they're taking to their lives and potentially others. The patient then signs a high-risk letter, and through this, they're also aware that if this happens again, then we will look to remove the oxygen. We inform the fire service, and as a prescriber, you're informed as well of the issues we're facing, because it's really critical now. If it then happens a further time, it's the red card approach. So that's the final stage really, and we do look to, in collaboration with you, remove the equipment. And I say in collaboration with you because we will push to remove it, even if that means that the patient has to go into hospital, or they have to go into an urgent respite bed. It's so serious because we, knowing the risk is there, have a liability not just to the patient but to surrounding buildings, to carers, to anyone else in the property as well, and it is the utmost serious situation. So that's why we work with you. We attend multidisciplinary team meetings. Actually, we ask for them because it's really important that everyone who is involved with the patient is aware of what the risks that are being faced and plans the care for that patient as well. Safeguarding should also be present if there's any doubts as to the patient's ability to make safe decisions. But for us, yes, this is, and I'm sure for all providers, our biggest headache and our biggest fear is patients smoking unsafely with their oxygen therapy. Thank you.
Okay, so ultimately, we basically want to work in partnership with you as the clinicians for patients. And whilst we're working with patients, and as we establish anything that would help you, make sure we escalate that to you. So if during a call we identify that a patient is deviating from what you've prescribed them, so we do find that patients may say, I'm using 4 litres a minute when the most current hoof we've got is 2. Sometimes that's because they've been reassessed by someone and we've not had an up-to-date hoof, or it could be that they're just choosing to self-medicate. But we'll inform you as a prescriber to make you aware of that. And if we spot that the patient's been spoken, we'll let you know. Any general safety issues, we inform you as well. We do get occasions when patients ask for something different because they may have seen a friend use a different piece of equipment, so we'd inform you of that. And again, when we're ringing out to booking services and risk assessment, sometimes patients will say, I'm no longer using the oxygen, can I have it removed? That could be for a child that's outgrown it, so they may have had it to be discharged as a neonate and no longer need it. Or it could be that the patient was discharged from hospital with an exacerbation and no longer need it, and they've not been followed up. On occasions, we will receive a hoof through, but we don't always have a lot of contact details. So it would be great if you could put as many contact details for the family or the patient's carer on there as possible, and let them know that we will be trying to ring them to organise the installation, and that we will need to do a desk-based risk assessment. Because if we can't do the desk-based risk assessment, then we won't be able to proceed with the installation. So it's really important that we have all of that info. So if we can't get through to them to book it in, then we'll let you know that we've not been able to proceed. And if we do move a patient into patient escalation because we can't get hold of them to book in a risk assessment or a service, again, we'll let you know. But ultimately, we want to work with you as much as possible. And there are some times when we might need your support as well to help us progress a patient if we're struggling to get hold of them or find them. And then finally, for me, the last slide on safety really is COVID. I don't think we'd be able to do this this webinar with the current climate without mentioning COVID. So we just wanted to reassure you that, as Joe mentioned, when you are assessing your patient and you're submitting the hoof to us, you will be prompted to let us know the current status of the patient. So, which is great, and then that will be our starting point. But while we ring the patient out and do the DBRA, we'll ask them again, just in case anything's changed. And we're not only looking at the patient, we're looking at anybody who resides with them. So if they live in a care home, we'd want to know if the care home had COVID cases in there. If the patient lived with, the daughter and the granddaughter, then we'd want to know the situation so that we're aware, the technicians know what they're walking into. We have the option to be able to do video installations remotely if the patient or the family members are COVID positive, so reduce the risks for technicians. On all orders and all calls that we take to arrange a visit, we ask the patient on every single call, and then we'd let the technician know whether he was going into a COVID positive or symptomatic delivery, or whether the patient is just choosing they don't want us to go and do a delivery inside the home because they want to continue to shield. Or whether we'll let them know it's just it's a normal delivery and there's been no risks identified. If we identify that we've got we've got a removal from a COVID positive household, we leave the equipment in there for 7 days, and then once we've collected the equipment, we isolate that at branch for a further 72 hours. So in terms of your support, if you know of any really local lockdowns or anything that's going on differently in your area, if you could let us know. Hopefully maybe the new rules announced yesterday will simplify things with with the tiering system, but I'm not really sure that might be the case. So if you do know of anything that would help us in terms of what's going on locally, then please do share it with us, just so that we can keep our technicians safe and the patients safe. All the technicians wear a range of PPE. And we have got masks that we can provide to patients as well, so that we can come into their homes and do their services, and they can stay distanced from the technicians. Thanks, Claire.
So are there any questions about any of the safety processes that we've just covered? No hands going up. Okay, so we'll move on to the homeward stretch. So to close, thank you again for listening and for your time. Hope that you've got what you expected from the session, that you found it useful, and that you feel comfortable, that you know how to engage with us, how to submit a hoof or re-hoof from Monday, and hopefully looking back at the learning objectives that we had from the start. I hope that you can put some ticks against all of those objectives. A few things to tell you about what we're going to do next. We'll issue a questionnaire to you all to get your feedback on today's session about the format, the content, and that will be important to help us develop future webinars, as we've said, the one particularly about the reporting. And equally, it's a question I will ask if you've got suggestions for specific topics that you'd like to see expanded or new topics for future webinars. So if you could please take a few moments to respond to that questionnaire, that would be really helpful. If you haven't already, what's next for you, please, is register on the portal and also tell any oxygen prescribing colleagues to register. As Joe said, we aim to turn around the request for registration within 30 minutes. 30 minutes now this week, when things are a bit quieter, will be much better for you than 30 minutes once you've got a patient in front of you and you're needing to move on to your next appointment or your next phone call. So please do register as soon as you can and encourage your colleagues to do the same. Also, we'll get out to you hopefully within the next week details of that next webinar about reporting. That's one that if you have administrators or non-prescribing colleagues within your team who help you manage your oxygen patients, it's one that's that would be good for them, so they could see the reports, particularly for the new patients and the removed patients. So please sign up for those as and when you receive the details. A piece of information I wanted to share with you if you were not aware already, but last week letters were sent to all of the oxygen patients within the East Midlands. It reminded them, because it was a second letter, it reminded them about the change on Monday from Air Liquide to us and provided them with BOC's contact details. As Hazel can testify, we know that it's been received because we've had a few phone calls from patients, and would say if between now and beyond the 19th, if patients or carers contact you with questions about the change or about the letter, if you can please reassure them that they really don't need to worry. They keep the same equipment. Any scheduled deliveries will be passed over to us. All of their information is being passed to us. The only thing that they need to know, which is covered in the letter, is that there's a change of contact details. So it provides our phone number, our website, and even mentions the portal that, as Joe said, they can register for to manage their or to place orders, order holiday oxygen. Not that many of us are holidaying at the moment, but we will again one day, I'm sure. So please do try to reassure patients that everything is in hand for the transfer. If they do happen to forget, the good news is, and they ring Air Liquide, the good news is that the Air Liquide 0808 number will be transferring to BOC at around 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday the 19th. So hopefully it will be done in time for people waking up on Monday. Small reminder that please, because some people have forgotten, please do continue to engage with Air Liquide about any existing patients or new hoofs between now and the 19th. If there's no further questions, I think we'll bring the sessions to a close. So last few minutes for people to put your hand up or submit a question. No. Not everybody is free to go. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.